it is IEP season. We are getting a lot of calls. People do need to know that you can't really, it takes 30 days to request an IEP meeting, and they have to hold an IEP within 30 days of your written request. And you're getting close, believe it or not, now to the end of the year. You're also getting close to the time that if you wanted the district to assess your child, they have a certain amount of time to generate an assessment plan, and then once you return it to them signed, they have a 60-day window, and they aren't required to conduct assessments when school is not in session, so after, June, whatever, 15th, whenever school lets out. So, if you need assessments, so what is it? It's the 23rd of March. You still have time. You don't have much time. Like, April 5th or 10th or 15th, somewhere in there, they don't have to start doing assessments till the fall. And if you request an assessment now and there's not enough time for them to complete it before the end of the school year, they're basically required to complete it and present it to you at an IEP meeting within the first 30 days that school's back in session. So it's funny because January is a lull time, and typically the private evaluators actually have time to, to do work on assessments, but, by like 6-8 weeks later, it's a whole different ball game. So we're going to assume, just for purposes of discussion, that you have a child who's transitioning into the educational system at age 3 or older. We are not going to talk a great deal right now about the interplay in California between the Regional Center for the Developmentally Disabled, which supports children from 0 to 3, and sort of that transition to the public school district being responsible from 3 to the 22nd birthday. We're going to start more or less at 3, but what we are going to talk about is if you are a regional center client and you are in California, they have a duty up to a year before they can start this. They have to assess they have to assess the child for regional center eligibility, which is a separate discussion. But the regional center, if they are supporting the child under 3, has to have a transition meeting with the school district. And sometimes these don't happen, and that's a very bad thing. What's supposed to happen is the regional center is supposed to take all the information that they gather from their work with the child, and they're supposed to hold a meeting and present it to the district, so the district gets the benefit of their knowledge and their speech and language person, their OT person, their infant stimulation person in writing the IEP. Now, if you don't have regional center eligibility under 3, the only way you're going to end up with an IEP is if you go to the district and request it. So I think that's where, or sometimes if you're in, if you, let's say you don't get picked up by the public system and you enroll in kindergarten, well, maybe your kindergarten teacher is going to refer you, but maybe not. Anyway, for a child in public school that's suspected of having a disability, the district is supposed to assess. Now, districts do not work as hard as they should to refer and assess people who arguably need special education and related services. So as usual, it comes back to the parent to be appropriately proactive. So if you believe your child is exhibiting symptoms that are consistent with having a disability, you need to write the school district a letter and ask them to refer your child to special education and specify what you think the problems and the needs are, and then wait and see what they do. They have to do something. They have to communicate with you. They may or may not choose to convene something called an SST, Student Study Team meeting, but they need to get back to you within a reasonable time and tell you whether they're going to assess or whether they're going to decline to assess, whether they're going to give you a 504 plan or whether they're going to do nothing. So the only way around that, or the quickest way around that, is in a perfect world, I would have each parent that has a child with presumptive special needs have an outside assessment performed by a private evaluator, because I think the absolutely most important thing in starting this long journey of raising a child with disabilities is to know from somebody who is neutral what the needs really are. And as you can see, that doesn't often happen. It usually starts with the school district is going to assess this person, and then the assessment is going to be used to recommend a menu of, educational services and placement for the child. So there are some evaluators that will take insurance, and they will charge a more affordable rate, let's say. In California, we have a few that will do the assessment for under $1,000. The problem is you kind of get what you pay for. It's not really fair. In fact, it's not fair at all. Some children get to drive Cadillacs or Mercedes, and other kids, are driving scooters when it comes to assessment. Everybody should have the right to competent assessment. But unless you can pay for it at the get-go, or maybe you can kind of strike a compromise and get an assessment by an evaluator that is less expensive, you're going to be dependent on the public school to evaluate and tell you what the needs are. Having said that, any evaluator that you hire that's going to render opinions about your child has to have seen the child, if the child is in school, in a school setting. Because hearing officers have been very clear about the fact that they're not interested in hearing opinions from people who have evaluated children and not seen them in an academic setting. Of course, if the child is not in an academic setting, that's a different situation. So then we get to the next problem with your private evaluator, which we talked about a little bit last week, I think. The private evaluator has to be there long enough in order to really make credible findings. And 20 minutes or half an hour, they're not going to see much. And that's why the district, typically tries to limit these evaluations. So this week, I'm involved in a process with a family who their child is older. He's 14 and a half. He's had intensive behavior services since he was 3. He's in many ways very much improved, although also clearly in terms of his executive functioning and his use of his leisure time and things, his social life, he's still disabled. But we're now getting to the point in time where, part of the evaluation was to look at whether any of his full-time ABA services can be faded back. So, first we had a stupid fight about what classes the evaluator was going to see and how much she could do on the same day. And, I've been through this dance a million times with them. They always eventually back down, but they have to get their pound of flesh first. So she went in and she observed for a couple of hours. So 90 minutes, 2 hours, that starts to seem more like an appropriate amount of time to see the student. And the student's functioning varies tremendously from class to class. And so it makes no sense, for example, for the evaluator to only be seeing the classes that the student is most successful in, because the underlying dispute that's going on between family and the district is that the district wants to fade the support. Now, the district started out on the wrong foot with me because they said that they wanted to fade the support and talk about changing to a district aid. And I said, okay, fading the support is not the same as changing to a district aid. And that's kind of where our debate has begun. Now, the evaluator has come back and said she thinks in certain classes he is functioning without the support. And so he probably could have some sort of a fade, and we could talk about fade plans someday if people want. But the thing that's sort of brewing that's interesting is she said, I only saw him in 2 classes. I wasn't able to see more because they limited me, and they're not going to let me come back again. And I said, probably true, except that I bet if you told them that you were going to recommend a fade, but you needed to see more classes first, they would let you. And she said, yeah, probably. So anyway, getting a competent evaluation of the child when he or she is about to begin his or her career in special education is very important if you can get it. What you're going to find when you look at the district assessments is not necessarily that you're going to disagree about the presentation or the need. You're going to disagree about how those results would drive a particular type of services, right? So in terms of preparing for your IEP, that's one important thing to consider.